Are you a hard-working entrepreneur who wants to grow your business without sacrificing your marriage? You have come to the right place. Welcome to the Business of Marriage with your host, Dino Watt.
All right, everybody. Once again, welcome to the Business of Marriage, marriage advice for entrepreneurs. Today, I have a really cool guest who is he might eat your face a little bit with what he does. But he is an amazing entertainer and just a really great guy. I've had the privilege of knowing him for a couple of years now. And actually, in a couple of the conversations you've already heard, he's been referenced a few times. He doesn't even know that, but in a good way, But Jason Hewlett is an international entertainer and has entertained audiences all over the world. And I'm going to let him do a lot more of his bio in just a moment. But before we move on to that, Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dino. Wonderful to be here with you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're doing great. That sounds great.
Awesome.
Are you used to doing that, like on the microphone, like, hey, can you guys hear me? Are you guys here?
Check. 1, 2, check.
So, Jason, give us just a quick intro about you, what you do, and your entrepreneurial journey.
So I'm a one-man show entertainer. I get to go all over the world and perform for the top corporations that there are. I'm just, if I look as tired as I feel, I just flew in this morning from Orlando to Salt Lake City overnight and was performing for the Direct Selling Association. All of the top multi-level marketing companies in the country and in the world come together for this annual meeting, and I was their entertainment. So that's the kind of thing I get lucky enough to do. And so I perform and I do a one-man show of music, impressions, comedy, stories. I try to help people get into their heart as much as possible. That's my goal. Get them laughing for the first time in a long time. Some people, you can tell, they need a laugh. So yeah, I do my funny faces, my voices, and it turns out cool. I'd love for your viewers, if they want to check out my website, jasonhewlett.com, has a lot of cool videos. But maybe I can do some of my stuff during our interview today.
Hey, maybe some of the questions that I ask will actually force you to do that. So I don't know, with concerns. So tell us real quickly, though. The majority of the people listening here are people who are either entrepreneurs. They want to be entrepreneurs. They're doing entrepreneurism on the side while they have their corporate job, and they're married. And that's the reason why I have you on this show. Tell us real quick a little bit about your personal life and how you came into being an entrepreneur.
So I didn't go to college. That's the first trick of being an entrepreneur, I think. I'm just kidding. No, I went on an LDS mission for my church to Brazil, got home and decided instead of college that I should go and try to make it as a performer. I've been told by people that I should try to go make a real living. And I had this desire to try to become a performer. So I had very supportive parents amidst all the naysayers. That was a very nice thing. And during that time, as I was putting my act together, I met a beautiful woman at our church, and the rest is history. Grateful that she would latch on to a guy that had no money, nothing other than a pretend dream, really. And she said, even though she was dating doctors, attorneys, and guys with houses, and I was living in my parents' basement, watching ESPN late at night in my Letterman jacket, eating Cheetos out of my belly button, working on Mickey Mouse impressions, Oh boy, hi everybody. She had for some reason I made that sale, and she married me. So.
And how long have you been married?
Well, we've been married 13 years this month. So.
And how many munchkins?
We've got 4.
4 little ones. Awesome. So, Jason, I love the saying, man plans and God laughs. So tell us at a time, and be specific with a time in your life where you had planned and God went, not so much.
Well, there's been a few. Probably the most famous story that I have, if I have any famous stories, would be the hard work my wife and I put in was to help me get a casino job as a full-time, as a headliner in Las Vegas. That was my goal. And we worked very hard to get that before we even had kids. And so we were married in 2001, by 2004, I was being offered a multi-million-dollar contract in Las Vegas to
Wow.
be a headliner. And where God laughs, I guess, is that I worked really hard to make this happen, and my plans all came to a head when the contract was in my lap, and I'm reading it, realizing that I needed to be controlled completely by this casino, by their management, by what they wanted me to do, rather than what I had set out to do, which was a family-friendly show for my potential children someday and for all families. And they told me that I had to change my act, not just do G-rated, and not even PG. They wanted some pretty interesting stuff, not only on stage with me, but the material to be a little more raunchy. And even though it might sound a little self-righteous to some people, for me it was just not an option. I couldn't leave that kind of legacy, whether I had children or not. And so I turned that away. And I walked away from millions of dollars for the opportunity of now speaking at schools about that decision and how we need to stand by our values. So in that way, I think God laughs, but he also makes the plan for us, and we just have to be willing to walk along with his plan, right?
Yeah, what a great story. And thank you for taking us really to the moment of that, because I think there are many people who have the experience. Maybe it wasn't millions of dollars, but hopefully if you have your vision and your passion of what you want to do as an entrepreneur, you understand what your main principles are so that those aren't wavering. I have a friend who talks about, situational integrity. Yeah. And that's something that as an entrepreneur, if you want a long lasting career, if you want people to trust you and believe in who you are, you can't have that. You got to be willing to just have your principles and stick to them. And we're talking, how many people have the dream of let alone millions of dollars, and walking away from that? So, good for you. That is really awesome. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Tell us, Jason, as an entrepreneur, your wife's gone on this journey with you the entire time. What's the toughest part about being married and an entrepreneur? Because there's a different language, I believe, that married entrepreneurs get to talk versus unmarried entrepreneurs get to talk.
Well, I talked to my wife a little bit about that question, and I said, what makes it great to be married to an entrepreneur? She said, well, it's cool that we really can make as much money as we want, and we're not tied to a real job, and at the same time there's the flip side of waking up every morning unemployed. So I'm in a constant state of motivation, which works well for me. If I was tied down to a desk, I'd go crazy. So it's great for me. But she also reminded me that she loves that we can hop on a plane and go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. Not very many obligations outside of the gigs that I do once in a while. Where that's tough for her is that when a family begins, you want to establish traditions. You want to make sure to be there for the kids' events themselves and the children as a whole, as a family. And so where for a guy like me, I get paid only when I do a show. I'm trying to figure out how to make that a little bit different as I'm getting older, but every time I get a gig, that takes precedence over every single date, every single thing in our life. And that's how it's been for over a decade. It's only been in the last year that I'm now turning dates away when it falls on my children's birthday or my anniversary or a holiday, where in the past, just to survive, I took gigs over Thanksgiving and missed birthdays, and I'm on cruise ships all over the world. I mean, it didn't matter. We had to make the living. I even planned gigs knowing that we had a child due. And I hate to say that now because I'm grateful none of those children showed up at the wrong time. I was there for all 4 births, but I remember thinking, I have to go make this money or I can't afford to have this child. I mean, it was that sort of crazy decision making. So maybe that's a long answer to your question, but truly the entrepreneurial side of it is that I get to call the shots. I get to do what I want to do. My wife loves the fact that she has sometimes an unlimited budget. And one of the problems with that as well is that if you don't save smart, you're not going to have any by the end of your incredible run.
Right.
So we're learning the best way right now. It's a good time for us. So
Yeah.
that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you giving us both sides of that coin. And I think so many people listening can understand and get the idea. And wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, there is that, time of euphoria. Hey, we just had a big contract signed, or we just did a big deal. Let's go celebrate. And then it's the time of like, I have to take this job, even though my child's going to, be born during this time, in order for me to afford that child, which nobody really wants to be in that position, but that's a fact of being an entrepreneur. So on that note, then, how do you, I'm going to go to a different question because I think it's relevant here. How do you cross the barrier of family life and business life? Like, where's that intersection for you?
So a couple years ago, I hired a coach. His name was Dave Crenshaw, and I would love for your people to look into him if they're interested. And one of the best coaches I've ever seen. He talked about really helping me get my values in place, which meant I was spending 3-4 hours of each morning responding to email, allowing that to run my day. And then I would barely get to the things that needed to be done. By the end of the day, I'd go, what did I do? And I would be working from, say I'd wake up at 7 to help the kids get off to school. I'd do my emails, do all my stuff until 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then I'd say goodnight to the kids and come back in the office till midnight. I was living that kind of life. That when I didn't have a gig, that was what I was doing. And when I did have a gig, I was on the road. So I was not a very present father. But I had to make a conscious choice to say, I'm a father first, and I'm a husband first. How do I give time to them? And so I've put in place some structures where I do my darndest. I mean, I would love to say I'm 100%, but I've done really well in the last 2 years of 9 to 5, and that's when I work. And I'm done at 5. I mean, a lot of times I'm even done at 3:30 when the kids get home. I prioritize that. I help them with their homework. I help them with piano. I try to help them out with all kinds of stuff. We have dinner at the table rather than in the past where my wife would bring dinner into my office because I was too busy sending emails and working on material. So I've also taken the opportunity to have a very specific date night with each child every month. I have a specific date night with my wife. It's every Tuesday night. We have a nanny that comes on Tuesdays only to help give her some relief for the day, and then I take her out on Tuesdays because, let's face it, Friday and Saturday is a tough date night. It's hard to get into a restaurant, and I'm usually working those nights anyway. So we do a midweek thing. It works well. And then I do specific memory creation with my children where we try to create memories that we can't get back. When they turn 6, I take them on a special trip with Dad somewhere in the country. And then they get to go on a trip with me every year from then on. So those types of things really make a big difference.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you're just, like you said, prioritizing, but you're making your business work around the priorities versus making the priorities, or I guess your family is the priority, work around your business. It's the Stephen Covey thing of, making sure the rocks go in first before the sand instead of the sand before the rocks. Yeah. It is vital. And it's funny because I hear from entrepreneurs all the time. It's like, I just don't have time to spend with my family. I can't do that. And I don't know about the people listening. I know I can totally relate to my wife bringing me dinner into my office and, me working, going, good night, kids. I'm going back to work. Yeah. And, it kind of hit me for myself personally one day when my oldest daughter was like, oh yeah, I don't want to be an entrepreneur growing up. And I was like, what? I mean, it's the greatest thing in the world. I have modeled how wonderful it is to you, right? And she's like, no way. Like, you work too hard, and with the, money influx up and down sometimes. And it kind of hit me going, wow, what am I modeling?
Right.
And so it made a huge difference. Okay. So let's get back to your marriage then and tell me this. What's the biggest lie that you were ever told about marriage or believed about marriage before you got married?
The biggest lie? Oh, that's funny. I I actually believed that pretty much everybody was going to get divorced, and
Oh,
that's
interesting.
that was not just from personal experience of those around me, but it was just the way of the entertainer, the way of the best speakers. I mean, I hate to say that, but everybody I knew said, "How long is this going to last?" And I was like, "Forever." And they went, "Whatever. You're an entertainer. You're going to be surrounded by women throwing themselves at you at gigs every single night." And while that can happen, the point is that it's not a temptation at all to me, because I'm 100% in on this marriage. I mean, I live for my wife, and she for me, and we as a family. It's that lie of, this is going to end soon for you, is something I work really hard to make sure that I don't mess up, and I make sure that she knows how much I adore her. I mean, it's not just flowers on Valentine's Day. It's flowers on Wednesday.
Right.
It's
Right.
it's rubbing her back just because I want to rub her back, not for the hope of something more. It's just, hey, let me show you I love you and appreciate you. It's little texts throughout the day telling her she's the best, and she tells me the same. Even social media posts, I think that's important for people to know. I am a married man. I'm proud of it. I love it. I share that in my shows. I let everybody know that I'm a happily married dude, and that's one of the big lies I got, Dino.
Yeah, I used to work in the entertainment world for a while too, and I got to tell you, it's totally true. It's very prevalent out there. But it sounds like there's an interesting theme that's developing through this conversation, which is once again back to principles.
Yeah.
Like the principle of I'm a married man, I'm 100% in, not that because of the profession I've chosen that wavers.
Right.
Because you can say that in anything. Oh, you're a traveling salesman. Well, you're going to have an affair, or whatever. You could do that with any profession. It's a matter of knowing what your principles are, and I believe truly that the reason why it doesn't happen to some people and it does happen to other people is because when your principles are on display, it allows other people to accept those faster than try to see if you're really committed to those principles or not. And like you said, you talk about it in your show. You talk about it on Facebook posts. That's a display of principle that then is like, well, I'm not even going to waste my time with that dude. He's too committed to his wife.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
And at the same time, to some women, it's more attractive, and that's the problem. I mean, I was at a gig in Vancouver the other night. A lady came up to me after I had just done a show called Father Time. I had a slide with my family on the screen, and she still came up trying to talk to me about what I'm doing later, and I just looked at her and I said, "Did you not just watch my show?" And she was kind of tipsy anyway, and I said, "Yeah, have a good night," and I wandered off, and I just thought, what is the deal with people? It's interesting. Sometimes they don't see it, but it's important, I think, to display it. To never take off that wedding ring when I go on stage. I mean, that's an important thing to me, where I have other friends who slip it off before they leave the house for the week-long trip. Like, what are you doing, man? Are we not committed? So,
Right.
yeah, that's what it's about.
Totally true. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that one. Okay. So let's have a little bit of hope here for our audience here. We talked a little bit before about both sides of the coins of being an entrepreneur, but break it down for us. What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur? Or actually, let me clarify that. Being a married entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would have to say, just off the top of my head, the fact that I get to take my wife anywhere at any time. I mean, that's the coolest part about it. We can go anywhere. And because the feast and famine life, really, it's about up and down. The best part, really, I've found recently is to establish an actual budget and live within that. And that's actually brought me more peace of mind than anything in the last year, is having something where I say, okay, some months we might make 20,000, other months we might make 3. And we used to live on this cycle of hope, hope and despair and hope and despair. Now we have this thing where it's like, this is set every month, no matter what. We'll meet this budget, and it might come out of savings, it might come out of excess, and it's a great place to be. That allows us then to travel, to spend time together, to actually have the peace of mind for me to be able to go forward and do all the things that we want to do as a couple and as a family. And yeah, the only other thing that might top that, Dino, might be the fact that I work from home and she's home too all day, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
So yeah, that's it.
A little afternoon delight here and there never hurt anybody.
Never hurt anything.
All right, good job. That's awesome. That's so true. You know, that there are some major benefits that people who are not married don't have. You know, so that's awesome. All right, so like it or not, your wife, whether she's actually on stage with you or not, she's a part of your business.
Yeah.
How do you go about making crucial business decisions about your business with your wife, or how do you guys tackle that conversation?
Well, we've kind of got like $1,000 limit decision thing.
Okay.
Where it's like, if it's $1,000 or less, I can pull the trigger that moment that I need to. But if it's more than that, we say, okay, if we need to spend $10,000 on something, I'm not just going to do that. I talk to her about it. We go over the finances, make sure everything's set. She has to be 100% supportive of where I'm headed. A lot of the time, she doesn't really know where I'm going. She just knows I'm leaving for a couple days. So she has to know that I'm all in and she's all in, and that's helpful. So I'm grateful that she's willing to do that for me.
Now you said when you were first married that you both worked really hard to get you to a place where you can get that contract in Vegas.
Yeah.
Now that I'm going to assume then that she was a little more working in the business with you, like helping you book gigs and all that stuff, right?
She was.
Now that's kind of changed a little bit because of family life and children, and now she's like the CEO of the family, right?
Yeah.
How has that affected the decision making when it comes to all the stuff you used to do? And why I'm asking this, because I know that some couples who go through that process, maybe it's a dental office they started together, or maybe it's a speaking business that they started together, or real estate, whatever it might be. And it's not a matter of pushing the other person out, but the other person just naturally grows to taking care of the other thing, but still sometimes feels like they want to have a say in this. Have you guys ever run up against that? Or
when I started the career once we got married, she worked for the money, and I was just creating the act. I mean, it took 2 or 3 years till I even made an actual living. So she was working a full-time job until finally one day I said, I'm going to hire a manager to run this. And she said, well, why not me? So she left early on in her career to start with me. And after a couple of months, we realized it wasn't really the best working relationship, because I'm demanding and I also have my, I'm a terrible manager. And so I said, let me just take care of it. And what happened is that she would do my travel booking. She would do some of that personal assistant type stuff. And eventually she just moved right out of the way. She took over the finances for about a decade. And then I hired an accounting firm to take care of it for the last few years. That's been a good move as well for us. But she's intelligent, she's amazing, she's supportive, and in that whole transition of her stepping out of the business side, it was actually a welcome change for both of us, because it was stressful on our marriage at the beginning.
Sure.
Not enough for it to be a big deal, but it was certainly not what we had hoped for. So,
right.
So she eventually moved out of that portion of the business, and I started to run it all myself with the team that I established around me. And where she came into play was costume design, or making sure I looked good, not just on stage in my suit, but between leaving the house and the show. I mean, she wanted me to look the part all the time just because that helped me get more business and credibility. I mean, she's like a fashion consultant. She used to sew and create all my costumes on stage. I mean, she did a lot of back end stuff that most people wouldn't realize. And the most important part was support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Supports me 100%. Crazy ideas, crazy career, up and down. She's my rock. I mean, she's easily the one in charge.
So on that note, then let me ask you a little deeper question. As entrepreneurs, sometimes we go to our spouses with these grandiose ideas of, hey, you know, I'm going to do this and this and this. And I just had this aha moment. And our spouse might go like, really? That's a really stupid idea. And crush your dreams all of a sudden, right? Now, in your case, you do characters. You do impersonations on stage. Has there ever been a time where where you went and said, hey, honey, check this out. I've got this amazing thing. You've done a little Jim Carrey voice or whatever it is. And all of a sudden she's like, yeah, not so much.
All the time. She is the,
she's going, who's that?
She's not even a real critic, if you will, like as a professional critic, but she should be, because if I came to her and said, and I've done this so many times, it's I can't even count it, but I'll say, this is going to be awesome, and it's Maroon 5, and I'll do the impression. She goes, that doesn't sound like them, and that's not good. And she'll just let me know right out front, where most friends of mine will go, cool, man, that was good. You know, she won't mix words at all. I mean, it's very helpful to me.
So take us down to a moment in time where I know it's helpful, but has there ever been a time where it was kind of crushing, like you just knew you nailed it and it didn't? Well, and you were like, dude.
Yeah, I remember when I was working on my Elton John voice, and she's very insightful in that I would sing it and I would play the piano really loud so that I could, because I knew I wasn't nailing it, but I thought if I convinced her, I could show her. So I'm playing it real loud, and she goes, I can't hear your voice, play it softer. So I kept trying and trying, and it just wasn't working in her opinion. She goes, I just don't think it sounds the same. And I said, well, whatever. And I went and I did my audition in Las Vegas, paid the money to go down and do the audition to become an Elton John impersonator, and they turned me away. And they said, you're just not there with the voice. The look is great, you know, some of the intonation, but the voice is not there. And it took me another 3 to 6 months to figure out the voice. And that was her telling me outright, it does not sound right. And she was right. And so from then on, I would go to her very reluctantly but determined, and I'd say, what do you think of this parody? Does this work? For example, one was Lady Gaga. I was working on a Lady Gaga parody for probably 4 years before I actually did it on stage. And I would test out, it was Bad Romance. And I was trying to rewrite it to be like Top Ramen. And I mean, just these bizarre ideas that made no sense. And she would say, that's just not that funny. And then one day after just fleshing it out, I finally came up with the one that I do, which is the chicken dance. And it's, Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. Had on this farm, he had a chicken, E-I-E-I-O. Back, 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 back. You know, and she was like, okay, that works, you know. But I had been through all kinds of parodies that just made no sense to her, even though to your viewers, that one probably didn't make much sense either. So maybe you should go look it up on my website.
Yeah,
it's actually a pretty good one on stage. So.
All right, then I got to call you on it. What's her favorite impression? And do it for me.
Her favorite, you know what? I didn't even ask her. I have no clue. But she used to laugh pretty hard about my raptor thing. She thought that was pretty cool. The Raptors kind of become one of my calling cards that I, you know. You know, ruin the microphone. So yeah, she liked that because I would usually run out in the audience, attack a couple people, and that was pretty fun. But yeah, she's loved many and not liked some.
What's your favorite?
My favorite's my face stuff, just because that's kind of my own thing, rather than a full-on impression. But yeah, when I was young, I found out that I could control the muscles in my face, and that's kind of become my calling card. You know, that people say, "I remember that guy that does those things with his face and can do that nose thing." They're like, "That's pretty cool." So that's kind of the reaction from the audience when I do music is one thing. But when I do those faces, and that's kind of my signature move, if you will, they go nuts over it. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been in the audience before where it's kind of like that pause for a second, like, is he really doing that? Did that special effects on the screen? And like,
Yeah.
dude, check it out. You know, that's awesome. That's great.
Right. Yep.
All right, Jason, we've come to a place where I call my not so random questions. They're going to be kind of rapid fire. You just give us really quick answers. We'll get through them, and then we'll be done with this amazing time that you've given us. So number one is, I believe everybody has a brand. I believe there's the Ken and Barbie couple. There's the, always kind of angry at each other couple, the not reliable at all couple. What brand would you say you and your wife are? And if you had a slogan, what would it be?
We would be probably just do it. I mean, we just kind of, whatever we figure we want to do, we do it. So that's kind of where we're at. And that's a good and a bad thing in some ways. For example, we weren't sure if we could have kids, and we started, trying, and then we eventually found out we could. And within 3 years, within 2.5 years, we had 3. So that would be a good and a bad thing.
There's a weird theme with my calls today. I've had 2 people in the same world as me, like 3 kids under 3. What are you people thinking?
I know.
Yeah, I know.
So that would be it. And like I said, we drop things and just go on a trip. So that would be it. Just do it. I know that's already a used brand name, but
that's great. That's awesome. All right, independent of your spouse, what's the most important luxury or indulgence that you give yourself?
I work out and I hike. I love hiking more than doing anything else other than maybe writing music. So those are my favorite things.
Awesome. What's a favorite book that you're currently reading, or a resource that's helped you in your business?
I read the Holy Scriptures every day. That's a powerful thing for me, and it works, keep me centered. There's a great book that I read a lot of books, but one of my favorites for probably people that would enjoy it in your audience is a book called The Slight Edge.
Oh.
It's by Jeff Olson. I've read every self-help book I think that was ever written before about the year 2000, and his book is one of the best I've read that's been written in the last 15, 20 years for self-help.
That's awesome. I'm actually in the middle of reading that right now. So that's great. So, and remember, for all of our listeners, all of these links for different things, like even that book, will be on the show notes on the show page. So make sure you look that up. All right. What's an ideal day with your wife?
Sleeping in a little bit, waking up in Hawaii, hanging out at the pool, having some Japanese food or local cuisine, and writing in my journal. I mean, that would probably be it.
What's your superpower?
Well, I asked Tammy if I have a superpower. She said stamina, the ability to work all day, all night if I have to. I'm known for only needing about 3-4 hours of sleep a night, and her superpower. I would say her superpower is she's a social maven. She's so great at making memories, and so yeah, those are what she said about me, and I say about her. As far as what mine is, I'd say my superpower is the willingness to look stupid, and most people aren't willing to do that on stage, and I've made a career of it.
That is so powerful. I'm just gonna take a little side note here that I was at an event this weekend, and I gotta say, I grew up as a performer and an actor and stuff, and yet the older I get, the more or less willing to look stupid I am. Yet I know that when I do, it brings more people to me. It's infectious, right?
Yeah.
And that you have been able to master that, I think, is a gift that you can actually teach people, and you probably do every time you're on stage with people just a little bit going, all right, if he's willing to do that, I can do that too. And there's a mentor I had years ago who's like, you know what? I'd rather look really, really silly and be really, really rich than look really, really cool and be really, really poor.
Interesting.
And you know, you are the epitome of that. So that's awesome. Okay. What's the best advice you've ever gotten about marriage?
I think it was the classic one that everybody seemed to give us was don't go to bed angry, but if needed, stay up and argue naked. And so, but we never argue, but I try to get naked. So
even when she's like, that's not happening. And like, no, I'm just getting naked for me.
I'm naked just tonight. Sorry.
I think was it Bill Engvall who has that whole thing of like, you know, argue naked with your spouse and you'll never have a bad argument.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So the last question that we have might sound a little bit morbid at first, but it's going to get good. Okay. One common denominator that we all have, everybody, is death. Someday, sometime in the far future, hopefully not near future, someone, you're going to die and someone's going to be asked to give you a eulogy, but you have decided ahead of time to pre-write it for them.
Yeah.
Who is going to give you that eulogy, and what is it that you write as the most important lesson in life?
Most important. Okay, cool. I remember a movie with Jim Carrey where he played Andy Kaufman, the great comedian. It was called Man on the Moon.
Right.
And I loved the ending because Andy Kaufman dies of cancer and he actually performs at his own funeral. And so years ago, I put together a recording myself. So if someone finds it, that would probably be what would happen. But nice. For the real answer, I would prefer for a friend of mine named Chris Polis to read my eulogy if he's still alive. He's 82 years old. So, and I'm 35, so I don't know who will outlast who, but he's been my mentor for most of my adult life, and he's an incredible spiritual guru for me. So he would be the person that I would have read that, and if he wasn't around, I would have Tammy read it, my wife. And the most important lesson that I would have to share is about the fact that family has to be first. There are so many opportunities, so many things that come along that we can justify or actually convince ourselves can be more important. But these kids are growing old fast. I'm not going to miss their life. It doesn't. I told the CEO of New Skin last night as we were flying home together on his private plane, Truman Hunt. I was flying home with him, and he said, "So, what's your goal?" And I said, my goal's never been to be a millionaire or to be famous. It was to make sure that my family had what they needed and that I could use my talents to provide and to bless the world. And if that makes me a millionaire, great. But if God has other plans for me, I would prefer to know them and do them as a family man. So I'm a family man first. Fatherhood is the most important thing I can imagine that a man can actually do or be. To be a husband that stays married, that loves his wife forever. Those are the things that I would leave with anybody, despite the fact that there's a lot of good stuff I could say. There's nothing more important to me than that.
Absolutely. Wow. I can like that. Definitely echo what you just said. That's awesome. Thank you for that wisdom. Now, Jason, how can people get more information about you? How can they get in touch with you? And then we'll have you just give us one last parting piece of advice and we'll say goodbye.
The best way would be through jasonhewlett.com. Hewlett is often misspelled, but it's Hewlett. If you have one of those broken Hewlett-Packard printers like me, it's the same spelling on there. But you can also, if maybe your viewers want to text into a cool service that we have, they just text in their name and their email, and they'll actually get something in their inbox, a couple videos of me, including a fun song that I wrote, and access to my DVD if they'd like. So the number for that is 801-701-1335. And if they'll text in, they'll get a welcome text, and then check their email inbox where they'll find some cool videos. I have a full show DVD that they can watch with their family. It's G-rated, and it makes for an incredible family night of getting everyone from their head to their heart, enjoying each other's company. But those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And Dino, thanks for having me on, man. I mean, the thing that you're doing is so cool, because the business of marriage, it's for real. If we don't work on our marriage as hard as we work on our business, it will fall apart.
Yep.
And I'm so grateful that I learned that early, and that I stick to that daily. And it doesn't matter if some opportunity comes along. If my business has something I need to take care of, I'll consider it, as long as family's in place first. So that's my parting message.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. That's a great parting message. And let me just put a little plug in there too with the DVD. I actually had the opportunity to watch it with my family a couple of weeks ago. We brought it home and put it in there, and you're going to laugh. You're going to have a great time. You don't even have to go to Vegas. You can be in your underwear in your own front room, and you can watch it depending on how your family feels about that. But you actually can be watching it, and it is a ton of fun. If you like entertainment in any way, shape, or form, this is a DVD get. So thank you, Jason, for sharing your time and your talents and your wisdom with us, and amazing expertise. I know so many people on this, listening to this show, got a ton of information, great takeaways, and we really appreciate it. So for now, we'll say thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. I'm good at that.
And there you have it, another great episode of The Business of Marriage, marriage advice for entrepreneurs. Don't forget to join us on our website for more discussions and more information on how you too can grow your business without growing apart.